Let's rock, baby.
I think it's about time I talk about what I would consider to be my favorite video game franchise of all time. Slicing your way through hordes of demonic enemies, blasting with unlimited ammo, hitting the devil trigger, having unbelievably monstrous boss battles, and a protagonist who is the definition of cool, enjoying every aspect of what he does for a living. This is Devil May Cry. I'm going to be giving you guys my overview of each of the games and discussing what makes them so appealing to me, and then at the end of the video we'll do kind of my own personal ranking of all of them. Now, there will be some spoilers here if you have not played the games, but I'm not going to go in depth with the story and lore in this video. Consider this to be more of just a overall review of the games themselves and not any kind of deep dive. But if you guys like this video and you would like to see me talk about the series some more, I would totally be open to getting into more of the gritty details. For now though, let's just do a basic overview of the franchise. The original Devil May Cry released on the PlayStation 2 back in the year 2001, but it almost did not happen. The biggest fun fact that any Devil May Cry fan will have and is always itching to tell every single possible person they meet, myself included, is that the creator of Devil May Cry, Hideki Kamiya, was originally working on what would have been Resident Evil 4, enhancing some of the combat and battle elements, but as the development of the game continued, it was seeming to stray a little bit too far away from the traditional Resident Evil, taking away more of the survival horror elements and adding way too much action. So the decision was made to make it a separate game entirely, which, in my opinion, may have actually been the greatest decision in gaming history, because what came out as the actual Resident Evil 4 turned out to be one of the best games of all time, and it sparked the entire Devil May Cry series with the first game. Talk about a lucky break. In the first game, we meet Dante, a silver-haired, half-human, half-demon devil hunter who sports a casual, laid-back personality and is also deeply haunted by his past. He's the son of a legendary demon named Sparta, who turned on his own kind and sealed the demons away in their own realm. But to say Dante has family drama is the heaviest understatement. The first cutscene we get is a random blonde woman named Trish bearing a striking resemblance to his mom, who puts a sword into his chest and then throws a motorcycle at him.
Sword. Time to go to work, guys.
This is how all women flirt, by the way. She requests his help at a place called Mallet Island, where the demon lord Mundus, whom Sparta defeated long ago, is on the rise back into the human world, and thus our journey begins. The first game set the groundwork for what all of the others would build off of over time, and similarly to early Resident Evil games, the first game takes place basically at one location. You're on this island, but you enter a giant castle with many different layers and stages to it. The series fits into the genre of what would be called hack and slash, basically meaning the game will go like this. You enter an area, there's a locked door. So you go into another area to find an item to unlock that door. On the way to finding that item, you have to beat the ever-living shit out of a bunch of demonic enemies. To do this, Dante is armed with dual pistols, ebony and ivory, which never run out of ammo, and it's amazing. As well, he carries a large sword on his back, and you use a variety of combinations between the guns and swords, basically using both long-range and short-range attacks simultaneously, and the game rewards you for how long you can go without getting hit, alongside dishing out a bunch of fun combinations of attacks. There's an entire rating system that judges you and gives you scores between D, C, B, A, and S, or maybe even double S. Now, you aren't punished for bad combat skills. You can still theoretically beat the game just fine as long as you live, but you are heavily rewarded for great combat skills, as the game will give you more red orbs the better that you do, and you can use those orbs to upgrade weapon attacks or purchase things like vital stars to increase your health, or devil stars to give you a longer lasting powered up devil form. Personally, I always go for the life increase first over everything else because having to start back from checkpoints can be a pain in the ass. Anyway, you beat the ever-living fuck out of all of these enemies to get the item required to go back and open the original door. Just try to remember where that door is. You go through the door and you get to a new stage of the castle, and every 2 or 3 stages, you end up with a boss fight. And these are the most intense and fun parts of the game, in my opinion. The adrenaline pumps through you as you look at this massive demonic creature like Phantom, who's like this giant spider made of lava, and you have to face it down. Some boss fights can be incredibly frustrating because they have so many different powerful attacks, especially depending on how large your life bar is at the time, and this is also why good kills and combinations matter. But the feeling of finally overcoming a boss in one of these games is absolutely cathartic. But what I love about the first game in particular is how many twists and turns that come up along the way. You don't really know much about Dante at this point, and it doesn't spell everything out for you either. You get little pieces of his lore and his backstory, which is great, and it also feels rewarding when you finally figure out a puzzle segment or get to a new area. The puzzles here aren't too difficult, but it's really more of a matter of figuring out where to go. Everything continues to get more epic as the game goes on. There's a point where the castle begins to shift, and the giant Mundus statue you saw in the beginning suddenly disappears from the room that it was in, and the music starts to get way more ominous. Oh, and we need to talk about the music in general, too. Devil May Cry is also known for its rock and metal soundtrack, which, as a dude that loves heavy metal, it always hits just right, and I feel like with each individual game, the music gets even better. Now, I first played this game when I was a teenager, and stepping into some of the negatives here, I had no clue what to do at some moments. This can definitely be one of those where the hell do I go kind of games. It doesn't give you a map, and it doesn't have a list of objectives. You kind of just have to figure it out. It's the kind of game that will pretty much let you go anywhere that you want to, so long as the doors and gateways have been unlocked. So you could accidentally spend a lot of time going in the complete opposite direction and not even realize it until 45 minutes later. As a teenager in the early 2000s, there was no YouTube to look up tutorials or walkthroughs if I got stuck. I probably played this game for the first time back in 2003 or 2004, so when I got stuck and confused, it was just too damn bad. I just had to try to figure it out. I'm ashamed to admit it, but beating this game the first time through probably took me over a month. But also because of that, every bit of progression felt so important. Beating a boss or getting to a next stage literally felt like I was overcoming the hardest obstacle in my life at 15 years old. And I vividly remember, it's a core memory, of finally getting to the level where you face down Mundus, entering that throne room and walking towards the statue. I will never forget the feeling of getting here, and also the boss battle itself. And, of course, this iconic line.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Classic. But in this fight, you turn to devil mode, flying through fucking space, fighting a giant statue demon lord. And it doesn't end there. You battle Mundus in 3 different forms, in 3 different locations, and my god, the intensity and my heart rate here, especially after taking so long to finally get to the end of the game. I remember it was like 2 in the morning, little teenage Ryan fighting for his life with the controller, and I gotta say, it's one of my favorite memories of all time beating this game. Now, there are also other things about the original game that are generally annoying. One of my biggest gripes is the camera angles. It'll shift abruptly as you walk around the castle, and it can be difficult to stay on track at times, like you're pushing the D-pad forward and the camera changes and now you're moving backwards. Or, because of a lot of the rooms looking similar, you can lose your sense of direction at times. As I stated, it's very easy to become lost if you don't know where to go. And there are things in the later games that the original just didn't get to yet, which I don't consider a flaw of the first game, but they're staples of the Devil May Cry franchise that just weren't here yet, like different fighting styles and more variety, whereas the first game is pretty basic. First game is also the only one to have a first-person sequence underwater, which is admittedly kind of lame and unnecessary. Also, the first game is the only one to not have a level select feature. It was originally going to be a Resident Evil game after all, but when I went to gather gameplay footage for this video, I realized that there was no level select feature, and I had to play the entire game all over again. So I speed ran the shit out of it in just under 5 hours, which makes how difficult and painstaking it was to play 20 years ago even funnier now that I could beat it in a day. Overall, though, the original game holds a very special place in my heart, and it's one of my favorite video games of all time. Its flaws are easy to look over with just how damn fun it is to play. I love the style and the aesthetic and the simplicity of the castle location. I can pretty much go back to this anytime and have a great experience, and it also launched the franchise that I adore. But now we get to Devil May Cry 2, released in 2003. And as famous as the original Devil May Cry is for being a breakthrough of the hack and slash genre and being an enduring epic experience to play, Devil May Cry 2 is famous for a different reason: for sucking ass. But before we get into that, I want to say something. Okay, for me personally, Devil May Cry 2 was the first Devil May Cry game that I ever played. One night in 2003, me and a bunch of friends rented a bunch of random video games, this being one of them, and at the time, I immediately fell in love with it. Essentially, the idea is the same. You play as Dante and you go on a mission hunting devils, and you use a combination of guns and swords to lay waste to hordes of enemies. And look, at the time, I didn't know how good the first game was. This was my first exposure, and it's because of this game that I went and played the first one. So, for nostalgia's sake, I still have an affection for this game. Now, I can't objectively tell you that it's great, and it does pale in comparison to the first, but I'm sorry, I still enjoy it, and it does have some good aspects to it. For starters, it was the first game to implement the level select feature. It may not sound like much, but it's great to be able to go back and replay your favorite levels, and if you want to have the opportunity to increase your score for each one. Especially going back and playing from the beginning after getting all of your power-ups, it makes you feel like an absolute beast in the early stages. A lot of the enemies here are also pretty cool. There's a kaiju-sized demon that comes out of a skyscraper, and the final boss, Argosax, is a pretty dope-looking character, I think. It also introduces the feature of playing as another character. Lucia had her own game disc back in the day, and you could play through the whole game as her as well. Lucia is only featured in Part 2 because it seems like every fan and even the game creators want to forget that Part 2 exists. I mean, even if you watch the Devil May Cry series recap video that's on the Devil May Cry 5 game, they give decent summaries of each game, except for 2, that they basically just say, and some other stuff happened, and skip over it. And okay, the villain of this game is lame. It's a human named Arius who's trying to gain the power of Argosax, but I do like that it's different than the first. They went with a human villain, which is an interesting approach instead of just doing a big demon lord again. But yeah, that's about it for the pros. The cons are essentially this. One is Dante himself. They completely change his personality for this game, and I have no idea why. In the first one, he was kind of wisecracking, and although he did get serious due to the situation, there was always an aspect that Dante enjoyed facing down these enemies. In Part 2, Dante is stoic and cold and barely speaks, acting like a silent, brooding figure instead of his trademark, carefree personality. Other than the way he looks and his backstory being the same, he feels like a completely different character. And with the gameplay, it is kind of boring. You can still do some cool stuff, but a lot of the enemies have huge life bars, but at the same time, they aren't difficult to beat, and they don't have any kind of creative way to defeat them, which means you're going to be sitting there hacking at them with the same moves for what feels like forever. And it can make fighting this really cool looking monster feel incredibly boring, and that shouldn't be a thing. The game feels like it drags, and the excitement of getting to the end of Devil May Cry 1 is lost when you get to the end of this game, where you're just kind of happy for it to be over. But having said all that, nostalgia is a powerful thing, and I'll always remember playing this for the first time and being introduced to Devil May Cry. Now, in the present year of 2025, I would not recommend this as your first Devil May Cry game at all. In fact, I'd really only recommend it if you're a completionist like me. Also, just a minor pet peeve, but at the end of this game, spoiler, Dante rides a motorcycle into hell, and I always remember wanting a Dante in Hell game. In fact, I was waiting for it for years. When 3 came out, it was a prequel, so I was like, okay, I guess I have to wait till 4. And then 4 came out, and they completely skipped over it. So yeah, whatever happens at the end of this game with Dante in Hell, I guess is left to our imagination. So we had one great game and one subpar game. So what would be next? Well, now we're really fucking talking. Devil May Cry 3, released in 2005, and this is where shit explodes into S tier. To me, this was the absolute peak of the franchise, the peak of gaming on PS2, and for me personally, after really thinking about it, I'm pretty sure I can declare this my favorite video game of all time. I love this game, and I played it dozens of times back in the day. It was the first game in the series to drop after I had become a fan, and not only did it not disappoint, but it exceeded all of my expectations. Devil May Cry 3 is actually a prequel taking place before the first game, so technically this is the first in the chronology. So really, it would be a perfect place to start. This one features a younger Dante before he even had a name for his establishment, and we open with another stranger entering his shop and attacking him. But then we get shit like this.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
The opening cutscene sums up what this game is all about. Just having the time of your life killing demons. The variety of attacks and combat here are all amped up to 11, and Dante is riding on dead bodies, doing a bunch of acrobatics and aerial attacks, and all to some legitimately great rock and metal music playing in the background over every battle sequence. This game is like slamming a white monster, hitting a new PR in the gym, and getting that goth girl's phone number all at the same time. It's just pure angst and adrenaline pouring off the screen. It's like the makers of this game had one mandate, and it was just make it fucking cool. And they succeeded. But it's not just that. The story and emotion in this game are great too. Our enemy here is Dante's twin brother, Virgil, who has since become a fan favorite and major character in the franchise. Virgil teams up with a man named Arkham, and the two of them erect this giant tower in the middle of the city, luring Dante towards it as they plan to use his amulet along with Virgil's to enter the demon realm. You get a lot of similarity to what made the original game great. Instead of Mundus's castle, we're exploring this giant tower, but it essentially works the same way. There's a blocked door, you gotta go find an item, fight the shit out of a bunch of enemies along the way, get the item, bring it back, and then fight a giant monstrous boss battle that makes you feel like you're truly scrambling for your life. The format is simple, but the execution is flawless. The weapons are also upgraded here with a lot more diversity. You get the guns and swords as usual, but you also get Cerebrus that you can use like nunchucks. You get the Beowulf where you can literally just fight hand to hand and punch the shit out of things. And this is the game that implements the style choices. So if you prefer swords like me, you can become a swords master where your combinations focus more on the swords. You can become a gunslinger, focusing more on the guns, royal guard, focusing more on blocks and counters, or trickster, which I use the least, but it focuses on dodging and agility. And there's even more styles you can unlock as you beat the game. So it makes the gameplay more personalized for how you prefer to play it. And since this is a prequel, subtitled Dante's Awakening, Dante unlocks the ability to use Devil Trigger, which in the games is essentially a brief power-up transforming you into a full demon form, where all of your attacks do way more damage. You have a Devil Trigger gauge that you have to build up, and as you use it, it slowly depletes. Dante gets this power-up after his first fight with Virgil, which happens only at Mission 7, which is pretty early in the game, and it's incredibly epic. Fighting on top of the tower in the pouring rain, and fighting Virgil is frustrating at first, but you do get the hang of it over time. You gotta remember his moves and just counter at the right points, but fighting him this early in the game was so unexpected at the time. I just imagined he would be the final boss. I lost my shit the first time through. But it's just a prologue fight, and the real fight is later on. Here in the story, Virgil beats you mercilessly, and after he leaves, Dante unlocks the Devil Trigger. After that, you do end up fighting Virgil 2 more times in the game as well. And we introduce a new lady sidekick for Dante, this time named Lady, and she's my Devil May Cry best girl. I don't know, I got a thing for brunettes with giant rocket launchers. She's a human devil hunter who at first is a bit at odds with Dante, but they do end up teaming up. But similar to the first game, the more that you progress, the more the tower begins to change and the darker and more difficult it becomes. The final couple of boss battles, especially the final fight against Virgil, is hard as shit. His life bar seems endless, and every time he uses his Devil Trigger, yeah, remember they're siblings, so he has the same powers, his life bar heals, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So just collect as many red orbs as you can before the final fight, because you will need all the health and Devil Trigger boost that you can get. But that's not enough. You also need to have the skill and precision to actually get close to him and hit him, so good luck. Actually, a lot of people consider Devil May Cry 3 to be a very difficult game, and yeah, there's difficulty settings, including the Dante Must Die mode, where one hit will kill you instantly, meaning that you have to play the entire game perfect. I've never been able to do that. But maybe it's just me, but I never found this game to be as hard as the first one. Now, it can definitely be frustrating, and unfortunately, similar to the first, it also can become one of those where the fuck do I go kind of games, as you have the freedom to explore the whole tower, and if you don't know what to do next, you could definitely go on some wild goose chases. And especially since enemies always respawn and you go back to rooms that you've been in before, which if you get lost, it can make it seem like you're on the right track since enemies appear. But no, there's enemies everywhere, and you have to fight no matter where you go. But that's really the only clear negative I can give it. Everything from story, enemies, gameplay, Dante's personality, I think everything hits exactly as it's meant to. I spent so many nights playing this when it came out, and now 20 years later, which I can't believe it's been 20 years, I still love it just as much. To me, Devil May Cry 3 is a masterpiece.
Love this. This is what I live for. I'm absolutely crazy about it.
After this, we would get our first Devil May Cry game for the PlayStation 3. In 2008, Devil May Cry 4 was released. Now we're back in the proper chronology, so this would take place after 2 and whatever Dante did in Hell, and it features a Dante that's a little bit older and more seasoned. Now, admittedly, I did not play this game when it first came out, and there were 2 major factors for that. One is that I didn't have a PS3 yet, and also I was kind of salty that this game introduced a new main character and you don't play as Dante. Well, not at first at least. Don't worry, I got over that in time, but let's talk about it. The main character of this game is named Nero. He's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, who of course voiced a bunch of great anime characters like Vash and Ichigo, and was also Adam the Black Ranger. And oddly enough, he's voicing Dante in the upcoming Devil May Cry anime, which is super strange and confusing because he's already the voice of Nero, but I digress. Nero is obviously part demon as well, although he doesn't seem to be as aware of who he is and his history as Dante is. The game begins with him attending a church sermon where it seems to be led by a group of people worshipping Sparta, led by a priest named Sanctus, when suddenly Dante bursts through the ceiling windows and shoots him in the face. The place goes nuts, and even though it's just the intro and it's not difficult to do, it is wild that the first enemy that you fight in this game is Dante himself. Talk about a twist. All of a sudden, you're on the receiving end of all of the styles and combat abilities that you used to slay countless demons in the first 3 games. Basically, you now play as Nero, attempting to solve this mystery, take down Dante, and eventually rescue your captured girlfriend. And reflecting back on this game, although this is a wild shock to take control of a brand new character and missing Dante heavily, I do appreciate the ambitiousness of this, of truly trying something different, but also still keeping it in the same world and tone as the other games. Also, as a viewer, you know that Dante is the good guy, so it makes you want to progress further into the game to figure out just what the hell he was up to in the beginning. You're seeing Dante's story from the opposite side. And as soon as the actual gameplay starts, any suspicions about the quality are put aside. Playing as Nero in this game is so much fun. You still have the gun and sword aspect, but his weapons do work a bit differently than Dante's. But the biggest new addition is Nero's demonic arm. You can use this arm to grab an enemy from a good distance away, pull them towards you, as well as use it to attack in various ways. This simple addition to the combat system makes Nero stand out as his own unique character, but it also makes things feel that much more intense. Anytime you swat an enemy away, you can just immediately bring them right back to you using the arm, and then use your sword to chop them into pieces. They also use the arm in different moments of the game to lift yourself to other areas or across building tops, and honestly, it's pretty great. I cannot say enough good things about the combat system of this game. If hack and slash style games are your jam, the controls here are some of the best and most fluid that you'll ever have. For a franchise that stresses style and the cool factor in your kills, it's nearly impossible not to get good with Nero. There's also a good variety of stages here. You start out in town and then you enter into this main fortress, and eventually you do fight Dante again, and the second time you fight him, he is way harder and not showing you any mercy. And like I said, seeing Dante use all the classic fighting moves on you is such a bizarre experience. It's kind of like you're paying for all the havoc that you caused in the first 3 games. But of course, we eventually realize that the Church of Sparta and its leader are actually after demonic power, and that Nero has been fighting for the wrong side unknowingly. It was great to see cutscenes of Dante getting info on the church, hanging out with both Trish and Lady. It might be a staple now, but seeing all of these characters together for the first time blew my mind as a fan. It's just too bad no one cares about Lucia. But about halfway through the game, you do get to switch to Dante and finally play as him for a while. And don't get me wrong, Dante is fun to play as, but after about 10 missions of getting so used to Nero's combat style, adjusting back to Dante takes a little bit of time, and I keep wanting to use my hand and grab enemies, but Dante doesn't have that ability. But also, my biggest gripe with this game come with the Dante portions. Dante basically has to retread the same locations and boss battles that Nero had just done, but in reverse order. And it's super underwhelming. It feels just as it is. You're playing the game over again, but as a different character. To me, this is the biggest flaw of the experience. I want Dante to have his own specific missions and his own boss battles. As well, Dante's fighting style just is not as engaging as Nero's here. And the final boss battle of the cult leader Sanctus, you do switch back to Nero for that final confrontation, and he's a pretty hard boss that requires you to be pretty precise with your demonic arm abilities, but compared to other game final bosses, I don't think he's as difficult, and he's not as fulfilling to beat, or even from a character standpoint, Sanctus isn't even really that much better than Arius from Devil May Cry 2. He's just a dude that's obsessed with gaining demon power. It's not that it isn't fun, but I also do think the game starts to lose steam after the halfway point. But as far as the main focus of playing them, which is the combat, it's great. It's just not as strong with story or that feeling of something grand and epic that some of the other games gave you. I wish the Dante bits were a bit better as well, but as far as the ambitious nature of this game and introducing Nero, it turned out to be a lot better than you would initially think. And Nero has now also become a staple of the franchise. This game implements other characters that you can play as well. You can play the game as Virgil, and you're even able to play as the girls, Trish and Lady. Now, that's a cool feature. So, yeah, Devil May Cry 4 is pretty good. Okay, so next. Honestly, I didn't even want to include this, and I only just recently played it all the way through to the end, and mostly I beat it purely out of spite so that I could properly talk about it. After Devil May Cry 4, something weird happened. For some godforsaken reason, Capcom wanted to reboot the series, so in 2013 for the PS3, we got DMC, Devil May Cry, completely within its own universe and continuity and not connected to the previous 4 games at all. As soon as I saw the cover to this game back in the day, I thought, oh no, Dante is now a young edgelord with dark hair. It does turn white when you beat the game, yada yada. But his fun, charismatic, cocky attitude has now been shifted into someone who pretty much just scoffs and swears at everyone and everything. It gets eye-roll inducing real fast.
Day over 12,000. Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Instead of Dante just being effortlessly cool, now it's like he's a teenage boy just trying way too hard to be cool, but is actually lame as hell. In this version of Devil May Cry, Dante is enlisted by his brother Virgil. I hate the way Virgil looks in this game. Why is he wearing a fedora? Gone is the cool, villainous Virgil that we got before. Instead, we get someone who looks like they're trying to fit into a film noir, but poorly. Mundus is also the main villain in this game, but instead of being this ominous, terrifying, demonic threat, he looks like a generic crime boss who, again, just constantly swears and also bangs demon babes in his spare time. Basically, I would say as far as characters and story goes, this game is trying way too hard to be R-rated cool. The Dante we know and love is effortlessly cool. This guy, he just feels like a 14-year-old who desperately wants attention. Now, I didn't play this game when it came out because I knew it was a reboot and everything I saw just didn't look good, so I skipped it. I only just played it recently, and as a dude now in his 30s, there was so much about this game that had me cringing, and I'm like the king of cringe over here, and I still couldn't get past it all. But forget all that, what about the gameplay? Is it at least a decent hack-and-slash game where you can go around and kill a bunch of enemies? So, for me personally, and again, just my opinion, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. When the game begins, I felt like there was a lot of promise. Even not liking the character reboots, it almost felt like if I could just pretend that this has nothing to do with Devil May Cry, I could at least enjoy the fighting. And the music, the soundtrack is fucking killer. Great rock and metal score, and you can effectively beat the ever-living shit out of the enemies. The gun-sword combo is on point, and in the first few levels, I felt like this was something I could really enjoy, at least just for the combat. But then, they introduced the grappling system. Oh my god, I hate this so much. It took everything that was good about the Nero grappling idea with his arm and turned it into a nightmare. Basically, it's the same idea of swinging to a new area, but this becomes the crux of the game, and it requires a mastery of a variation of button combinations that if you forget or mistake or do the pull action when you're meant to do the push action, it just causes you to fall to your death. I fell over and over and over again, and maybe you can say it's just a skill issue. That's fair. I'm just not skilled for this. You have to press the left trigger with B to swing to objects, and half the time it doesn't catch, and then you have to use the right trigger with B to pull objects towards you to land on. You have to interchange these constantly, and sometimes you have to double jump to reach them, but then sometimes you also have to boost yourself through the air, and it's just a random guessing game of what you're supposed to do. Judging the distance is difficult. Sometimes you're under a time limit, and this never stops the entire game. You have to get good at this grappling system, or else you are just fucked. There is no way around it. It shows up almost every stage after the 4th or 5th one. It became the bane of my existence, and I absolutely hate it. There's also certain enemies that can only be attacked with specific weapons that you have to remember to cycle back and forth to. Don't get me wrong, the combinations of weapon types are pretty awesome, but it's frustrating when you can't just stick with what you like best, and you have to switch between all of these weapons for specific enemies, or even to get to new areas. Also, the devil trigger in this game is ass. It essentially does the same thing, but you don't transform into a devil form, you just get this lame glow around you, and whenever you activate it, it causes a power surge that sends your enemies flying into the air, so if you don't jump right away to catch them, you won't even be able to attack them before the devil trigger runs out. This game has moments of greatness, but there's so many things that annoy me about it that it's hard to say the overall experience was enjoyable. I have no idea why a reboot, especially one like this, was ever an idea in the first place. Why not just make another sequel? It literally could have been its own game with new characters, but instead they had to defile the grave of Devil May Cry and do this instead. Look, it has plenty of defenders out there, and there's people that genuinely like it, and that's perfectly fine. I do think it has some good aspects, but I'll pass on ever playing it again. But then, 6 years later, now in the PlayStation 4 era, we got the return of the true series, with Devil May Cry 5 releasing in 2019. And what a return to form this was. You know, gathering the footage for this video, I went back and played various levels of each game, and holy crap, the jump in graphics from Devil May Cry 4 to 5 is just jaw-dropping. This game looks so good. The characters are more detailed, and it feels like you're watching a legitimate movie during some of these cutscenes. When looking at the series as a whole, you could say Devil May Cry 5 is the pinnacle. First, we have the story. This is the best since Devil May Cry 3 by far, and it starts out right in the middle of some huge demon tree spreading its branches all over the city and unleashing giant bugs and tentacles attacking the citizens. Nero rushes to the source of the tree and finds all of our characters, Dante, Trish, and Lady, all defeated by this huge motherfucker named Urizen. The cocky bastard just sits there in his throne, not even standing up to fight you. He's the first enemy, and you have no chance. You get obliterated right away. But a super creative element of this game is the story is being told to you out of order. So we have 3 characters dealing with this event at different times: Nero, Dante, and Ali Sykes. I'm just kidding. His name is V, and he's our new character on the block. Anyway, you switch between all 3 of these characters depending on the missions, and each one has a fantastic variety of abilities, and all of them are super fun in their own way. Nero is back, now working with Dante, but his demonic arm has been ripped off of his body by an unknown enemy. So now this new element of the game is a bunch of robotic false arms, which perform basically the same function of grappling enemies and pulling them towards you, or vice versa, just now they have more uniqueness to them, different abilities, and you can also make them explode anytime you want for some extra damage. All the best elements of Nero's abilities from 4 are back here, and somehow done even better and more fluid. This game also does away with a lot of the original red orb system of buying items to help you out, and instead just cuts out the middleman, and when you die, it just asks if you want to use the red orbs for anything. You can choose how much of your life bar you want it to replenish, and I think that's a solid advancement from the classic style. The new character V has a very different fighting style than you're used to, because he doesn't really fight at all. He conjures a demon bird and panther to fight for him, with V only dealing the finishing blow. So when you play as him, essentially you want to avoid being damaged while simultaneously controlling your familiars to attack. It's a little weird at first, but it's actually incredibly fun when you get the hang of it. I also love when you pick up enough speed with him running, you just start riding on this little black cloud. I wish I had one of those. Honestly, I like this edition a lot, and it helps the characters feel very distinct from one another. But the other great thing here is that it splits up the missions between the three characters pretty evenly. And when you get to play as Dante, holy shit. Dante is a fucking beast in this game. This is the oldest and most seasoned version of him in the games after all, and it makes you feel like that. You can cycle through all the styles, Swordmaster, Gunslinger, Royal Guard, Trickster, with the flick of the D-pad, and the pure visceral carnage that you can inflict makes the wait for Dante all the more worthwhile. By the way, one of Dante's weapons in this game is a motorcycle. No, really, just a full fucking motorcycle that you can use to pummel your enemies or run them over. Amazing. The combinations you can pull off here and how quick and easy it is to cycle through the weapons and fighting styles makes it the most versatile and devastating the fighting has ever been in Devil May Cry. This may have the best controls for Dante ever, and I say that as a longtime player of these games. Also, the boss fights, great. Finally, I got a little bit of that larger-than-life feeling from the early games when the bosses feel like true obstacles, with the visuals treating it with the impact that it needs. Now, I would say Devil May Cry 5 isn't as difficult as the old games when it comes to the bosses, but the mood and atmosphere of the boss fights are exactly where it needs to be. Also, a lot of the puzzle portions of the series are mostly done away with here, so if there's any flaw in the game, you could say that maybe it's repetitive, but that's also offset by switching between the three main characters that you play as, always making it feel fresh and new. Like I said, the way that they differentiate the levels between them is very balanced, and in the story, we're playing with time, so you keep getting more information with each segment to put the whole plot together piece by piece. Each character has their own specific missions and their own specific bosses. The first half of the game takes place in the city that's overrun with demons, and most of the second half of the game is inside this giant tree abomination. And if I had to nitpick, I guess I don't really like being inside the tree for as long as we are, because I think the scenery is kind of bland and it all looks the same, but that's not really a very big issue when you're being distracted by all the fantastic combat. And the story is really good, going back to what was great about Devil May Cry 1 and 3, and giving us a personal story for Dante, but also for Nero as well. Things tie back into events of previous games. It gives a pretty satisfying couple of final boss fights that felt like a long time coming. Devil May Cry 5 is great. It's super replayable, and some of the best controls and game mechanics of the whole franchise. Oh, and you can change the camera angle as much as you want, however you want. That might not seem like much, but as a fan of the original games, that's a godsend. So here comes the difficult part. How would I personally rank these 6 games? I know everyone's ranking and reasons for liking particular installments is going to be different, and that's the fun of it. So here's just my personal subjective ranking. At the very bottom is going to be DMC the Reboot. Although it does have some genuinely fun game mechanics, I just get annoyed with the game to no end. Destroying established characters, a lame plot, and the overuse of that stupid grappling system. Even though I can understand why people would enjoy this, this just isn't my Devil May Cry, and it's something I'm okay pretending doesn't exist. Next up is Devil May Cry 2. I think a lot of people would put this game last, and I get it. I give this game more of a pass than most people thanks to nostalgia, and it got me into the series, but I can't look you in the eye and say it's a good game. But I'd still rather replay it than the reboot, because at least the character looks and moves like Dante. Maybe personality-wise he's a little strange, but it's still closer than the reboot. And, you know, the Skull Knight boss fight is pretty fire. That's about it. Above that, I'd put Devil May Cry 4. It's an ambitious entry to the series, and I respect them trying to do something different and maintaining the core identity of the series at the same time. Nero is a ton of fun to play with, and I like a lot about this game. But the Dante segments are kind of disappointing, and I think the overall story and antagonist are just okay. Really fun, but not the best. Now, here's where it gets tricky, and I think any ranking of these next 3 games is perfectly understandable, and it's going to come down to incredibly specific preferences. But next for me is going to be Devil May Cry 5. Look, if you put 5 as your number 1 or number 2, I would say, yeah, you're correct. The gameplay, the combat, the boss fights, the story are all solid, and the graphics look incredible. I have nothing but praise to give this game, really, especially after the reboot. This was an incredible breath of fresh air. This game kicks ass, and I'd recommend it to any hack-and-slash fan. But in my number 2, I'm going to put the original Devil May Cry, and my reasons why are just simply my own personal history. The amount of time and effort I put into this game in my early teens, it just became a definitive game of my adolescence. We all have history with a game from our youth and where we were at the time, and it stays with you for life. And that's this game for me. Combat and gameplay is rough compared to the newer stuff, but I love the atmosphere of this game, exploring these ancient ruins of this old demonic castle. The beauty is in the simplicity. It's also a story that relates deeply to Dante and his past, and battling Mundus at the end is still the most my heart was ever racing playing a Devil May Cry game. I'll never forget the night I beat it for the first time. But at number 1, top of the list, is Devil May Cry 3. I think it's the peak of the franchise. It did everything the first game did, but better. Dante versus Virgil, exploring this tower, the introduction to the fighting style the series would continue to use and improve on, some of the best boss fights of the whole franchise, and the full solidification of Dante's personality. This is my favorite video game of all time. And yeah, there's a lot of things in Devil May Cry 5 that were done better, but the experience of playing this through for the first time is something that can never be beat for me. Plus, I like playing as Dante for the whole story. Anyways, Devil May Cry 3 is king in my opinion. So yeah, that's my basic overview and quick review of the games. I've always wanted to make a video about this series. It was just finding the time to do it. If this video does well and you guys like it, I'd be down to go more in-depth in the games and the storylines, maybe some demon breakdowns or whatever else. You guys let me know what you'd like. If you're new to Devil May Cry, I would say start with 3 or 5. 3 because I do think it's the best game, and technically it's first in the timeline, so you'd be starting at the real beginning, but I know some people have trouble going back to older games, and as much as I hate to admit it, I guess PS2 era is old now. I mean, this game did come out 20 years ago, and I'm old, you guys. Or I'd say you could start with Devil May Cry 5 because it's the most recent, it looks amazing, the game mechanics are incredible, and it's pretty accessible to new players. Although you might not understand the significance of everything going on with the characters, it's still a fun ride. It does come with a little recap video, and if you're interested in getting into the world, it's just really fun to play. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, guys. I really appreciate it. Please give this video a like and comment to help it out in the algorithm. Let me know how you would rank the Devil May Cry games down below as well, and if you want more videos like this, let me know. If you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have channel memberships and Patreon linked down below. And if you're feeling really frisky, there's a CashApp down there too. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you next time.
Looks like we have a winner.
Jackpot.